Prior to his current appointment, he served as president of global sales and operations at president of Nu Skin's North Asia region and president of Nu Skin, Japan. After receiving his bachelor's degree from Utah Valley University, he received 2 master's degrees, one in business administration from Duke and another in international business from, how do you say that? Goethe. I assume in Germany. Oh, yep, that's what it says, in Germany. Ryan currently serves on the UVU Foundation Board, is the chairman of the U.S. Direct Selling Association, and was treasurer of both the Direct Selling Association's Board of Directors and the Direct Selling Education Foundation. In his free time, Ryan likes to spend time with his family, including 3 kids. He loves traveling, skiing, and surfing. Please join me in giving a Wolverine welcome to Ryan, one of our own.
Thanks, Tom. Uh-oh. How's everyone doing? Good? We have an echo. Can we turn that off? I'm off now. No? I can speak loud enough without a mic. Can everyone hear me okay? You guys okay? This is going to be a really long lecture if you guys aren't interactive. Is everyone okay? Fantastic. By the way, I do spit when I speak, but I would love to have people come closer. I'm a people person on my off time. If you want, those in the back row, we're making eye contact right now. Come on up. Would love to have more of a conversation than a presentation. Is that okay? I do a lot of slides. In fact, we have a couple of our people from Nu Skin. Jeff Nemelka, why don't you stand up, Jeff? Jeff, give Jeff a round of applause, by the way. Jeff's fantastic. Jeff and I have been working for quite a while, but Jeff does all of my speeches in visual form. And I said, Jeff, I don't want to do any visuals today. I just want to have a conversation. Jeff, how much weight have you lost, Jeff, in running? 70 pounds. Ran his first marathon. Was that your first marathon? You can sit down, Jeff. First marathon? Sub-4, first marathon. Isn't that cool? Talk about transforming lives. And we have Casey. Casey, did you go to UVU? Yes, sir. What did you graduate in? Or you haven't graduated? I've graduated. Okay. What did you graduate in? Public relations. Okay. So we brought a couple of us here just for fun. I needed a support network. But I want to get to know you a little bit before we go, because I technically selected the topic of transformational leadership. But I'm going to craft and evolve my message according to who's in the audience here. So by raise of hands, well, I think you're all either juniors or seniors. Is that right? How many seniors do we have here? And then I'll just deduce the other. Okay, so 2/3 senior, juniors. How many people were supposed to graduate years ago? Fantastic, great. So I did go to, as Tom said, I love being back here. Let me give you a little bit of background. I grew up in Orem, Utah, was born here to a family. In fact, I always feel a little cheated because I had cousins that lived in California. Anyone from California? Yeah, so you guys, right? This was back in the non-global era, right, where you didn't have cell phones. You actually had the dial-ups, 1970s. And my cousins lived out in California, and I so badly wanted to live in California because every time they came and visited, they were wearing or doing something really cool, right? So kind of like this guy here. What's your name? Josh, are you from California? Yeah. Yep. So Josh, go ahead and stand up. Show them what you're wearing. So my cousins came in. Look at these shorts. Have you ever seen shorts like this? My cousins came back in from California wearing these kinds of shorts. I was wearing these OP corduroy white shorts, about this high as a young kid, and my cousins walked in with these cool shorts, and all my cousins, I had a bunch of brothers, 10 kids in my family, 5 brothers, and we're walking up with our OP shorts on, and my 4 cousins come in with these long shorts, and they said, yeah, these are Bermudas. This is what we wear in California. And I was like, man, those are cool shorts. And then as soon as they said that, he's like, yeah, those are bad. I was like, what's bad about them? No, that's what we say in California, right? It's like, they're bad. That means they're cool. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I want to be a Californian. But my parents moved from California. My father was from Walnut Creek. Anyone? Danville, Walnut Creek? Okay, my mother was from San Ramon. They got together. They converted to this weird religion that caused them to move to Utah. right? So, and they had 2 kids in California, and right before I was born, guess what they do? They get a zip code 84057. And so I'm officially a Utahn, right? But I grew up here. My parents, very hardworking. And by the way, I'll bring this all the way back. Will you keep me honest? Bring me back to the point of transformational leadership if I go too long on this story. But I grew up here. My dad was the hardest working man I knew, extremely humble. Never went to post-high school. In fact, I don't know that I think he did get his GED technically, but didn't really go to school much. My mother was not involved, so I'm a first generation. Anyone else first generation college grad? I love that. On the UVU Foundation, we're so focused on first generation grads, so love that you're here. But I came in, my grandparents moved back and actually built a home overlooking this Utah Valley Community College campus. At the time, it was newly, Tom, do you know when it was founded? UVCC. It was 41? Do you know when the campus, so I'm not that old. When was this campus actually formed? It was like the 80s? Yeah, so about the 80s, and I remember that because I had a birthday party where I got how many Star Wars fans are here? Any Star Wars fans? So what's the Han Solo machine that he flew, the spaceship? Was that the Millennium Falcon? That's not, the X-Wing and the Millennium. So I got a Millennium Falcon for my birthday at my grandparents' home, and I opened it on the porch overlooking this campus. And I didn't know what the campus was, and they told me it was a new school. So that would have been 1983, so somewhere around there, right? In any case, I grew up without really an understanding of the importance of education. My parents didn't talk about it. Again, my grandfather, who was the most successful guy I knew, kind of became an entrepreneur on his own out in the Bay Area, did relatively well. He saved up $1 million. I remember him telling me that. He had $1 million when he retired, which, by the way, isn't enough to retire. We were talking about that earlier with a friend of mine. And he moved to Utah to help raise us. My father had 3 jobs. He was an optician by day. He worked in the evening at another optical shop at University Mall, and then he mowed lawns on the side. My mother was a secretary. She went back to work. With 8 kids, you can imagine, her hands were full, and so my grandparents moved here to help raise us. In that process of kind of growing up, I learned a couple of things about myself. One was that I'm not very smart, and the other was that I was extremely ambitious, though. And I think the combination of those, for me, have really set the course of my growing up and my professional life. And that's really what I want to talk with you today about, is kind of this transformational leadership topic. Because, so I asked how many of you have graduated, or how many of you are first generations, and you raised your hands, but give them to me again. Can I ask a couple of you to tell me why are you here today? What are you trying to accomplish with your school? Give me a couple of. Give yourself a better life. Your son. How old's your son? Fantastic. So you're already giving him a better life by being focused on him. Awesome. What else? What else do you want to accomplish through this? Awesome. So he said you're here to further better what you do. Let me ask by way of hands. How many of you know? I'm going to ask 3 questions. Okay. So how many of you know what you want to do when you graduate? Raise your hand if you know. Okay. Okay. Good. How many of you know the field in which you want to work? So not necessarily the type of work exactly, but the field. Okay, so we got like a quarter of you know what you want to do. This one's more like, somewhere around 35, 40%. How many of you have no idea? And be honest, if you have no idea what you want to do. How many of you didn't raise your hand at all? There's about 30% of you that didn't raise your hand at all. Okay, so we've got a smattering of people that really know where you're going and people that don't know where you're going, right? And that's okay. If I go back again, so kind of growing up, and I'll kind of continue the story here. So me being a younger kid, by the time I was 8, I needed to start mowing lawns with my father. I had no idea as a kid. In fact, I just took one of those personality tests. Have you guys done those? And they ask you all the questions about when you were a child, what did you like, put these words. I basically found out that I was extremely lazy, directionless, And I was always looking for peace. I was a white, right? But on this test. But as I was growing up, I really didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. And that was kind of the beginning of my life journey. My parents weren't really education-oriented. My dad wasn't in a profession that was really intriguing. And so I had no idea. What I did know that I didn't like doing was what I have ended up doing my whole life, which is work. My dad, by the time I was 8 years old, my dad needed more money, and so he had this brilliant idea. He had this I would call it an appreciating asset. He might have called it a depreciating asset. Daniel, what's the difference? You're a finance guy. Appreciating asset, right? He had all these children. We had 8 of us, and he thought, could I put these guys to work? And so they're not taking my money; they're making me money. So brilliant move. So he starts a business called Tom & Sons. And the Tom & Sons business was a lawn mowing business, right? And so Tom & Sons was all about, we would go out, he would drum up business, go get jobs, and then my brother Kate and I would go mow the lawns. He'd drop us off, he'd pick us up. That plan worked brilliantly. I was making $100 a month as an 8-year-old. Pretty good, right? That's not bad. As an 8-year-old, I bought a lot of stuff. I bought my first skateboard, which was cool, Tony Hawk. I bought a 10-speed. I bought a Freddy Krueger mask. I actually remember buying that, spending $25 on a Freddy Krueger mask. And that system worked really well. But about the time that I was 11 or 12, one day he didn't show up, my dad didn't show up on time to the job. And so Kate and I had finished mowing our lawn, and we were waiting. And the owner of the business came out as a small business in Pleasant Grove by the Purple Turtle, and he gave us a check. And the check was for $470. And I was sitting there, I was like, wait a second. Kate, you make $100, right? And by the way, we were doing 6 jobs, okay? You make $100. Kate, I make $100, so that's $200, and I was never good at math. So my dad just made $270 profit, right, on that one job. We had 6 jobs. That was one of our smaller jobs. What we quickly learned was we were being exploited, right? Our dad was making tons of money off of it. So Kate and I thought about it. We shared a bedroom with 2 of my other brothers. We stayed up all night. We were going to confront my dad about this exploiting process. And at that point, there was no child labor wasn't a big issue, right, back in the early 80s. Yeah, take advantage of it. It works. So we stayed up all night because we were worried about this, but we were upset. So we finally, a couple weeks go by, and we had the opportunity. Our dad was taking us out to work, and he always stopped by. To keep the help happy, he would stop by and he would get us a donut at the Circle K, and he'd get us a juice. He was always great, right? He took us out to lunch after, kept us happy. So he's buying us the donut, and we stopped and we said, Dad, so how much money are you making on Tom & Sons, right? Because we make $200. How much are you making? He said, well, I don't make very much at all. And I said, well, how much are you making? He said, well, Ryan, you have to understand, I bought the trailer, I bought the lawnmowers. I'm like, okay, yeah, you bought them once. And I pay for your gas and all of your treats. I was like, okay, but how much do you make, Dad? So he finally comes out of it, and I think the number was like, well, we make about $1,600 a month to go to pay all of your bills. Anyways, that was my introduction to exploiting the workforce. I try to stay away from it because I don't like it, but it does happen. It's a reality. Going through that process, oh, and I should tell you the end of the story, right? So I was stuck, right? He was my dad, still is my dad. Worked until I was 14 until I could get a job of my own. And that was the only way he would let us out of the deal is if you have another job, then you can quit this one. So I went to work finding jobs, and I ended up getting a job at Supersonic. It was called Tank's Car Wash. Worked my way through that, but I was really directionless, right? So fast forward a couple of years, I worked through a whole bunch of different jobs, learning everything I don't like to do. And I ended up getting to, and I promise I'll cut this story a little shorter and get to the point. I ended up getting to the point of where I needed to go on a sabbatical, and I'll keep religion out of this, to a faraway land for a couple of years. And when I was over in Korea, I started to be surrounded by people who had parents who raised them with and education as part of the conversation, right? And I started to room with guys who were thinking about, what do I do after 2 years? Anyone been away for a couple of years, 18 months, 2 years? Yeah. I don't know what you can say these days, Tom. I don't know. This is like, but yeah, so when you're in that process, doesn't the anxiety start to build up, right? For those that are away, and you start to think, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? This cush job that I have, as much fun as it isn't, at least I'm busy and somebody's paying my bills, and I'm going to have to go back and do something else. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So fast forward, came back from Korea, and I went back into retail, which is where I do my work, and sold clothing, and was happy there, making a little bit of money, and decided, I had a friend come in and say, hey, you really need to start going to school like we are. So I enrolled in UVSC, I think it was at the time, State College. I love that you guys keep progressing here at UVU, because I'm getting free diplomas every time, right? Because I think I was a State College grad, and then they mailed me my university diploma just a few years ago. When you guys keep doing your work, at some point go to a PhD program, and then I'll get a free PhD. But I ended up doing that and getting involved in it, and that's when my two worlds started to collide, right? That I had this understanding that I'm going to have to work for the rest of my life. I looked at this world I had been in internationally, and that's when kind of this idea started to form. When I started going to UVSC and I was working, and I got out of retail, and a guy came in, well, he became a buddy of mine, came in, and I was a clothes nut, and the guy bought 6 pairs of shoes for me. And I was selling on commission, right? So these were like $100 pairs of shoes, I don't know, I'm not an English major. And he bought 6 of them from me, and I thought, who is this guy? So we became friends, we started talking. I found out he worked at Nu Skin. I had no idea what Nu Skin was. I just knew they were that black Darth Vader tower down on Provo Center Street. And he said, hey, you really should. He knew I spoke Korean. He said, we're opening Korea. You really should come down there. And so I went down to the high rise. I asked, what jobs do you have available? They said, yeah, great, we're opening Korea. You speak Korean, go ahead and apply. So I applied, found out, and I'm making a really short story really long. I applied. They told me I couldn't work there because I didn't have a diploma, even though I spoke Korean, and I kept going back and back and back and back. And eventually, persistence or annoyance is the best way to get a job, Daniel. Good, just case in point, right? Just keep pushing, and they hired me on. And the great thing from there was I was able to bring those worlds together, right? Of what I was learning to love with international business and this education I was getting. Now, it's been an interesting journey, because when we talk about, and we'll get into transformational leadership, thanks for keeping me honest here, right? Because that's our point. What I want to convey to you guys as you're sitting there is the importance of investing in that perpetual learning cycle. So if we think about, when you think about building your own career, a lot of people tend to feel like you need to know what it is that you are going to do in the future, and you need to have an understanding of that graduating from school, right? And I don't believe that's actually how most of life happens. Most of life happens through a series of coincidences that are going down a path that you're focused upon. And when I look out there today, so let me ask you guys, how many of you are studying finance? Finance? Okay. How many of you are studying marketing? Okay. How many of you are studying technology? One? Okay. Not more than one? Oh, Tex won't take this class. Got it. Oh, accounting, okay. So each of you have your own disciplines, right? But I think what you're going to find when you get into the workforce today is that your finance, your work that you do, what you learned in school, will be somewhat applicable to the work that you need to do, but it's not going to be entirely applicable, right? So you need to be able to flex through that process. When I started my career, I had no idea what I was really doing. I went back to Nu Skin. I started to work in the international department, starting to work with our Korea business, and quickly learned that I would need to learn to become kind of a jack of all trades and master of none. I would need to learn a little bit about finance. I would need to learn a little bit about operations management, a little bit about marketing, a little bit about sales, and through that process of learning a little bit about everything, I became a little bit more valuable to the company that I worked for. Going through that process internationally, I think one of those things that I would love for you to keep in mind as a transformational leader is the importance of that jack of all trades and master of none concept. That as you go to school and you learn a certain discipline and profession, it's great for you to be able to be an expert in that role. But our best business partners today and the people that really are successful in our business today, running our business, and I'll tell you a little bit about Nu Skin in just a second, are those who really have a broad-scoped, broad breadth understanding of business in general. Does that make sense, what I'm describing? So how many of you today have a full-time job in addition to going to school? Okay. How many of you that have a full-time job feel like you're in a profession that would actually, that you would like to be in longer term? Okay, so how many of you feel like you're going to be fairly transient over the next few years in finding your way? A few? Good, then your expectation is probably a good one. As you go through this transformational leadership journey, I'm going to get into some characteristics here in just a second that we believe are critical. As you go through this transformational journey, I think it's really important that you flex where you need to flex and you be malleable as you need to be malleable to learn new things. Going back to the Nu Skin experience, we shipped off from there, from working in Korea and Asia. I then went over to Europe for about 5 years, left Europe, went over to Japan for another 10 years, and found myself coming back here. Somewhere along the way, I went to Duke and did an MBA, and I did that Goethe program in finance, although I still am not very strong and proficient in finance, to try to round out my skills. But I think what's really important, again, I'll get to Nu Skin, is that we are as flexible and malleable as we can be working through our future. So that concept, please keep in mind. Now let's move forward to Nu Skin, and Nu Skin, where it is, what it is, and where it is today. So how many of you have heard of Nu Skin? Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about it. So do you know what we do? Does anyone know what we sell? Anyone could give me a good example or a good description of Nu Skin? Yes? Yep. Good guess, right? Skincare, we sell skincare. We do about $1.8 billion in skincare today. What else do we do? Yep. Dietary supplements. So skincare and dietary supplements are our two biggest businesses. We do about $2.6 to $2.7 billion over in 49 different countries. Roughly, it used to be half and half skincare, half nutrition. Today, it weights a little bit more to skincare. Nu Skin, actually, if you haven't heard, we actually just became the world's #1 beauty device company, so beating out Panasonic. Did anyone of you use Clarisonic? Only a couple? Clarisonic's it's a great product, right? Clarisonic, how many of you have heard of Clarisonic? How many of you have heard of Panasonic? Please, yeah, okay. So Nu Skin just last year by Euromonitor was voted as the largest skincare device company in the world, right here in Provo. We utilize and this is important to transformation, we utilize a set of independent contractors. So we have about 1 million independent contractors that live around the world that distribute these products on our behalf. So these are all independent business owners that want to start their own business. How many of you have a desire to start your own business? According to McKinsey, 67% of you want to. So let me see 67% of the hands going up. How many of you want to be self-employed in some way, shape, or form? Yeah, a few more. Okay, so McKinsey's stats may be wrong, but according to them, they say 67% by 2023 will want to own their own business. In any case, we leverage this network of independent contractors to sell our products. Now, Nu Skin was founded in 1985. How many of you were born? Oh, no, it's not even going to be fun. How many of us were born in 1985? We have a couple of us. We got a couple, right? We were alive back then. So Nu Skin was founded in 1984. Now, again, the way the world existed in 1984, there were no mobile phones, right? We were still using dial-ups or push-button phones. And so the way our company was founded was on this what I call an analog model of a person talking to a person knocking on doors. How many of you have knocked on doors for a profession or voluntary or otherwise? How much fun is that? Raise your hand if you loved it. Anyone with Vivint? Right, I love it. I love it. It is the hardest job in the world if you've ever knocked doors to make money. Am I right? It is a hard job. But Nu Skin somehow, in that period of time of selling door to door personal care products, skincare, nutrition products, was able to build a business that was about an $800 million a year business, knocking doors door to door. And in that time, we were relatively successful, but our biggest challenge was in connecting people at any scale, right? Because think about it, if you were to exclude your Facebook, Instagram, Snap friends, on average, what is the average number of friends? And this was actually a Gallup survey that was taken in 2004 before Facebook exploded. On average, let's just have fun with it. How many friends would the average person have had in 2004 without Facebook, Instagram? Any idea? 20 close. Oh, who said 7? You said 7? Oh, yeah, sure. But I mean, you could probably conjure up a list of then the people that you... 16? Okay, it was 34. Okay, as far as I recall, it's 32, 34 Gallup survey back at that time. They had 34 people on average, average number of friends. And by the way, that list of friends includes everyone you knew, right? I mean, it wasn't like you had no idea of their birthdays. You just knew them. After they did the survey again in 2014, on average, how many friends do you think the average person has now in friends? So don't describe it. How many would you say today? Okay, you're popular. She went from 7 to 700, right? So that's a 100x increase. Not quite, but I love the ambition. What's the other average? Do you know? Yes. Not as high. Closer, yeah. Getting closer, warmer. 300, yeah. It was 307, right? So the average number, so think about Nu Skin in 1984, trying to connect people with, on an average of 30, somewhere between 7 and 32, 34 friends, into where we are today, where the average person has friends of 300 on average, and that was 2014. Who knows? Now with influencers, maybe it is 700. I don't know. What's interesting, and there's this big debate about social, right? Are they really friends or not? And I always look at that and I say, well, I don't know, but I'm not good at birthdays, but I don't know people's birthdays. I don't know where they went on holiday. I don't know what they ate for dinner. What else do you post socially, right? I don't know there's weird stuff being posted. My point is that in the world that we existed in 1984, in this analog world of connecting people face to face, we were built to do that, right? As a company, all of our capabilities, all of our internal work was built to connect people face to face. Fast forward to the e-commerce era of the 90s, we were still able to connect people and just transact on e-commerce. And then you fast forward to 2004 and beyond, and now we're in this world where people are no longer even opening their door to someone knocking on it. Have you guys, any Sebastian Maniscalco fans out there, comedians? Sebastian, have you heard of him? So Sebastian Maniscalco has this great shtick about when people knock on the door today, what do you do today? Like in the old days, it was like if somebody knocked on the door, it was like the whole family runs up and see who's at the door. Today it's like you duck, you don't even want to be seen, right? It's like, no, don't answer the door. Who would come by our door if we didn't know them? That's the world we live in today. So imagine a business model that's built, our economic engine is built on connecting people face to face, door to door, and all of a sudden now having to operate in a world where people won't even open up the door and they won't interact face to face. As a company, we were not built to function in that new world, right? So as a leader in the company, and I'll fast forward again, I guess I should, so I'm fast forwarding a lot, but after leaving Japan 2 years ago, well, it was about 5 years ago, our prior CEO, Truman Hunt, asked me to come back and lead a strategy team with the sole intent of redefining or redevising a strategy that would help us be successful in the world, in the future state world rather than the current or the past state world. So we led a global team to set up that strategy. That team was all around understanding. So how would you set a strategy in that world? It's a business class. Let's ask. Let's go back and see how much you've learned so far. How do you set strategy? Where does it start? What do you do first? Set a vision. How do you get to a vision? Yeah, it starts with a vision or a mission. There's debate on which one is which, but you start where, and I call it reading the tea leaves, right? So reading the tea leaves is all about, any yogis here in the audience? Any tea drinkers? Okay, you know what the expression reading the tea leaves is though, right? So reading the tea leaves is all about predicting the future. Trying to understand, based upon our current trends and where the world is going, we need to devise, what was your name? Renee? We need to devise a vision for the company, right? So step back 5 years ago, Truman says, Ryan, our old model, our face-to-face, door-to-door model has been disrupted. It's being disrupted by social, it's being disrupted by mobile technologies, it's being disrupted by the global nature. All of these, what I would define as the tea leaves, are changing and evolving. You've got to go read all of those, and you've got to come up with your vision or the vision for the future. And based upon how that vision's defined, will determine whether or not, well, he didn't say this directly, but whether or not you're going to lead the company, right? Can you figure it out? Can you find the answer? And so through that process of defining, how am I on time, Casey, just to make sure? Oh, fantastic. How many are aboard here? I can talk new skin all day, so have one person raise your hand, please, because I know I'm boring myself, so I'll raise my hand. Anyways, going through that, so the process that we went through then as a company, we basically took all of those insights, what was happening in the global social mobile world, we overlaid them against our current business, right? Understanding this analog face-to-face, person-to-person model, and we determined what is the viability of our business if we don't transform, and that was where we got to this disruption, disrupt yourself, transform yourself, right? So we do that analysis, we got the work done, and that's when we then got to the real difficult part, which was we were able to paint a picture of the future. We were able to define Renee's point of a vision that was clear. And our prior vision was to become the world's leading direct selling company. So that's the model we're in, direct selling, independent contractors. And we were going to measure that by paying more commissions than any other direct seller out there. So there are $10 billion giants out there. We're going to do that. But that was the old model. Our new model now was to become the world's leading opportunity platform. And the platform was all about how do we connect all of these consumers around the world who are all spending, in fact, we buy more from our toilets today than we buy going to the store. Do you realize that? There's more, and that's a crass way of saying it, but it's true. More commerce is conducted in bathrooms on your phone at Amazon than happens in any retail outlet combined. So in that new world of connecting the social, mobile, global world, how do we operate that way? So we went back forward, we set this new vision, the opportunity platform, and we knew then that was the future and how it was set. Now the next big challenging thing was around building capability to then accomplish that vision, right? Because as an analog direct sales face-to-face business, we had people that were really, really good at sales, right? Again, how many people sold door to door? Raise your hand. Yeah. Are you, depending on your personality, can you be more or less successful? Right? It's sales, right? The really good, personable people that sell face-to-face are really successful that way. But on social today, who's selling on social, and are they really good face-to-face communicators and sellers? Not necessarily. How many of you buy Kylie Cosmetics? You don't? Nobody buys Kylie? Kylie, she's got $1 billion business. Kylie Jenner, Kendall Jenner, right? The Jenners, the Kardashians, Bruce, or what's her name? Yeah. Today you don't really have to be good at the face-to-face, person-to-person to sell socially, right? That's what I mean by differences in capability. So as a company, we had to determine how do we transform our internal capabilities from the there to the here and now. And it was all about this idea and this concept of building what we then went through, what I call a transformational leadership journey. And the transformational leadership journey is all about how we as individuals and then how we as a collective body transform from what we are today into what we need to be for the future, right? So for each of you, and this is why this is so important in education, when we look at transformational journeys, excuse me, I won't cover that. When we look at transformational people, we look at a few key capabilities and characteristics. And I would argue, by the way, that business today is in a perpetual state of disruption and transformation. Any business that isn't constantly trying to reinvent its model in one way, shape, or form is being looked at by someone else who is trying to disrupt the business that you're in. Businesses are simply a collection of the people that run them. If we are not then transformational people, we're never going to be successful in a business, and we're never surely going to lead a successful business in transformation. So I mentioned that there are a few key characteristics that we look for in terms of transformational leadership. And I'll maybe kind of end with this idea, and then we can open it up for questions if you have any. If not, I can go early. But the first one is what I define as a growth mindset. Now, I've stolen that. I've plagiarized it. So who knows? Who's heard of the growth mindset? Have you heard of it? Yes, Carol Dweck. Very, very interesting professor. Does everyone know? Do you guys know? I don't want to repeat this because my daughter was the one who taught this to me, my 13-year-old. So I'll tell you that story in just a second. It is fantastic. Can I give it one more segue here? So my daughter, so we came back from Japan. I need to finish my whole story, sorry, but I came back from Japan 2.5 years ago. So after I finished the project with Truman, redefine our vision and our strategy, then Truman gets called on an unpaid sabbatical for 3 years. Then I stepped into the president role, and for the last 2.5 years, I've been the president here, right? So I came back from Japan where I'd raised my children in private schools. Now, how many of you were privileged enough to go to private school, like me? I'm kidding, I didn't go. You did, you made a couple, good. We have a couple solids here. I was not. I was in the public school system right here in Utah, and I'm the product of that environment, for better and worse, for worse and better. But my children all grew up in these private schools throughout England, Germany, and Japan, and I brought them all back 2.5 years ago. And I decided, because I thought we need to re-emerge, get back in the community, that we'd pull them out of private schools and we'd put them into a public school. And I won't name the public school, but it was an awakening experience. My daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, Ava, who is an extremely vibrant, vivacious, aspiring child, went from being vibrant, vivacious, and aspiring to, within 3 or 4 months, depressed, self-conscious, closed in. And I couldn't understand what happened. We brought her back in December. By May, she was a different person. And I was so discouraged because it was a tough transition. I thought, I've just ruined my daughter's life, right? I pulled her out of Japan where she was thriving and being successful, and I stuck her into an environment, and I blamed not myself, of course, never blame ourselves. No, I'm kidding. We should always look at ourselves. Instead, I blamed the school. And I was like, this school's ruining my child. I've got to find a private school. Go stick her back in. That's the easy solution. I don't have to parent her. I can stick her in the school. So that was my mindset. All the way from May until August, I thought, I need a better school, not a better parent. And so I went ahead. We did that. I talked with her about it. I said, Ava, what's going on? She just says, I don't know. I just can't do anything. I'm new in this environment. I don't have friends, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, fast forward to August 30th or whenever school starts again, and within 3 weeks, my daughter starts reemerging as this vibrant, vivacious, what was the third word I used? Aspiring child, right? All of a sudden, Ava starts to reemerge as Ava. By about my October 2nd, my birthday, by the way, if you mark that on your calendar, I'll send you my address. You can mail me something. By around my birthday, around this time, so we're only talking within 6 weeks of her starting school, Ava was back. And so one night we were out to eat, and I said, Ava, what's going on? What's changed about today? And she says, well, it's my teacher. And I forget her name. She was a first-year grad from UVU who began to teach. She said, Dad, every morning she starts our morning with a 15-minute clip from this lady, Carol Dweck, on what we call the growth mindset. And she starts to tell me about the growth mindset. And she starts to tell me about how important these principles are. So for Carol Dweck, and maybe I'll just ask a few of you, what are the key 3 principles of having a growth mindset? As a transformational leader, I'm trying to connect it all. What are 3 key, not the 3, there's like 8 or 9. Any ideas? Can you think of any of them? Failure is learning. It's not truly failure as we typically describe failure. Yeah, so that's one of the key principles. Another one is what she calls, the art of not yet. Does that sound familiar? So as individuals, we need to learn the art of not yet. So in other words, understanding that we're never going to be there, we're always going to be working to get there. And so the more that we as individuals can master that idea of the art of not yet, the more effective we will be in continuous and perpetual self-development. And then she wraps this whole idea around the feedback, getting feedback, not looking at it as failure, looking at the art of not yet into what she calls a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. Okay? So as a fixed mindset, we tend to look at things as when we get negative feedback, it becomes what? Negative, demoralizing, as opposed to a way for us to learn. And so this principle of having a growth mindset, for me, is principle and priority number 1 of what we desire and what we really require from all of our leadership at New Skin. If you're going to be a part of our New Skin leadership team, you have to be a transformational leader. What does it mean to be a transformational leader? It means that you have a growth mindset, a can-do attitude. I remember the second print, and Casey, how am I doing on time? I got to wrap it up. Okay, let me go through just a couple of quick things, and then we'll do questions. And if I talk long enough, we won't have to do any questions, so that'll be great. So the first principle is around the growth mindset. The second idea of a transformational leader is the ability to have both visioning and execution capability. So there's a famous hedge fund manager named Ray Dalio who talks about the importance of having both vision and execution capability. Because most people in my career, as I've found over 20 years, you have people that are really, really good at painting really vibrant pictures that can see and read those tea leaves really, really well. And you have, and that might be a minority of the population, and a majority of the population is more oriented around, give me a task and I can get that task done. If I were to ask you to raise your hand, generally speaking, are you more of a vision-oriented person, or do you like to have those to-do lists, those checklists, those action items? If you're a vision-oriented person, what do you raise your hand? And it's not one's not better than the other. You need both. If you like tasks, raise your hand. Okay? Yeah, it's probably around, and I have no research to support this. I would generally say about 80% of people are more task-driven and 20% are more vision. But the magic of being a transformational leader is having the ability to do both. Having the ability to see and develop that vision and also then bring it to an executable action. And that's so important from a leadership standpoint and from a transformational leadership standpoint, because when you start changing the world, everyone's world, with a new vision, you have to be able to build plans that then connect them to that world. Does that make sense? Otherwise, what you end up doing is confusing the whole organization, right? You paint a whole new, Renee comes up with a new vision. He says, hey guys, we're all going here, but he doesn't give you the roadmap of how to get from the Reagan Center back to the other side of wherever. Yeah, so that's actually, a lot of visioning is not being specific enough. So Renee just demonstrated that, right? But trying to get the whole organization from here, from where we are here, is one of the challenges. And that's why having that transformational leadership capability is critical. So again, if we go back, transformational leadership on the one hand is about having that growth mindset. Are we willing to learn? Are we willing to change? Are we willing to look at failure and fail forward? And then number two, do we have the ability to vision and execute? And bringing those elements together. And then I think for me, the third element, when we really talk about that transformational leadership, is this idea of passion. And maybe that's where I'll end. Because generally speaking, in my view, having passion about what you do, and it doesn't matter what you do, but having passion around that will determine your ultimate success or failure, period. Right? I mean, we ultimately become what we want to become, right? Like if you dig a little deeper into that, we ultimately become what we want to become. We ultimately will become, we're a product of the work that we do every day, right? Every decision that we make. If we're really passionate about something, if we believe in the mission of the company or the vision of where we're going, we'll get there. What I've personally found in my life is that there's two kinds of people. There are people who are passionate and there are people who are not. And I know that sounds terrible, right? Because we should never classify. And with a fixed and growth mindset, right? I just violated Carol Dweck's principle. I believe we can all become passionate people. But I believe a lot of us in our lives, we sit on the sidelines, right? I believe we never quite realize our potential. We kind of get stuck in our ways. We kind of get stuck in our job, our school, our state of life. And we never really spend enough time thinking about what it is that we want to become and what it is that we want to do in order to impact the world. Yes? No questions? Okay, so I'll wrap it up then. So what I would love to have you leave with this on is those three principles around transformational leadership. Having the right growth mindset. Never really getting fixed in your ways. Being able to build those capabilities of visioning and executing. And then lastly, having that passion for what it is that you do. And being able to wake up every morning and do that. And with that, I guess I'll close, Tom. Thanks.